early life experiences do impact many of the ways our nervous system develops and how we handle stress throughout our life. It does not have to be a life sentence. I'm going to share information about what that looks like and how to break free. If you're new to me, hello, my name is Rochelle Walsh. I have been a complex trauma therapist for couple decades. I now specialize in helping women overcome chronic overwhelm and anxiety, chronic stress response, and I do so in a 90-day high training, high support, transformational coaching program. I also specialize in using neuroscience-based strategies paired with biblical principles. So I love helping believers break free. These strategies work with anyone, but I love sharing my faith through what I do. Our early life experiences still influencing chronic patterns of stress. What's really important to understand this is so many people, amazing people that I work with, intentional people, people that are determined that their life is going to be different and they've made really wise choices. They are very capable. They are very intelligent. They have a strong faith that guides them. And yet they oftentimes will find themselves stuck in patterns that indicate that there's a chronic underlying stress response. So I want to talk a little bit today about how that develops and what we can do to really break free from it. Early on, when we are born, our mammalian brain, our fight or flight is, responsive. Like babies can't learn and think things through cognitively. They just cry when there's pain, or they will want to get out of an uncomfortable situation. They want to get help. They want to belong in their environment. It's very important for all of us to be able to achieve a sense of belonging and safety in our environment. And because of that, their systems adapt to what's going on around them, right? So we all know babies are sponges and they're taking everything in, and our nervous system is storing every experience that we have, every emotion, every physical sensation, everything we take in from our environment, and storing it in the body. And with little ones early in life, let's say it doesn't even have to be, big trauma like we would normally say there was this one big event of physical abuse or repeated physical abuse or sexual abuse. It can be also, the chronic experience of feeling a lot of the tension from the environment. Maybe that parents are not getting along, or there's a lot of conflict between a parent and a sibling, or there's a lot of stress because parents have gone through a really big loss or a financial strain. And there's a lot of tension in the environment. And kids, because they are so needing to depend on co-regulation, which is their nervous system, adapts to the caregiver and regulates to that nervous system, that there's a lot of stress in the system, a lot of overwhelm. The child feels that stress from the environment. We all know, like, they're little sponges, right? They absorb everything. Well, if a child's in a really stressful situation, but they can't exercise fight or flight because, let's be honest, kids are not big enough to fight, and they don't have the freedom to flight, so they can't exercise this stress response that comes up in them when, say, there's stress in the environment, or something really hard happens, or something bad happens. Because children can't oftentimes exercise that fight or flight, then what happens is that response gets buried in the nervous system. So we know early on, babies will just cry or will just throw a tantrum, but they're learning as they grow, like what's acceptable, what's going to get my needs met, what's going to be okay with mom or dad, what response am I going to get? So rather than just expressing what's happening, they are thinking about how is that going to be perceived in the environment? How am I going to be treated? What's going to happen next? And then they're also absorbing through modeling. How does mom or dad handle their stress? How do they respond to emotions? The kid who, all of us early on just have fight or flight, where we just respond to those impulses, as they grow up, are then realizing what can be expressed and what cannot be expressed. And so when fight or flight cannot be expressed, but it gets held in the nervous system, it gets patterned and conditioned into the nervous system. So fight or flight gets held in the system, and rather than expressing the emotions or the stress, the child finds a way to adapt to it. So they might adapt to that chronic stress by, always getting good grades or pleasing someone or always being busy and doing everything that's needed in the environment. Or they might, express that by acting out. Sometimes people express that by acting out, and getting attention in other ways. Or the body might hold that, and that fight or flight suppressed response might be expressed in headaches or gut issues or physical symptoms, physiology that represents that and expresses that stress response. So as we go on, whatever pattern that is, and there's this underlying stored pattern of chronic stress, the person may go on to make very different decisions in their life. Maybe they say, there's never going to be substance abuse in my home because I'm going to do this, and they make those decisions and they achieve that life. Or I'm going to be successful and I'm going to never be in a disadvantaged position financially, and they go on and they work really hard. But what they've become adaptive to and what has been helpful at one point now becomes a way of guarding against that expression of fight or flight or the managing of really big emotions. And when that happens, when our nervous system is stuck in fight or flight, even if it's buried way down low, our body will show symptoms of that. So then we might end up getting high blood pressure or high cortisol levels, high cholesterol levels, autoimmunity. The body will start to fight itself because it recognizes that suppressed trauma or suppressed survival stress. It recognizes that suppressed trauma as a threat. And so it's fighting against that threat, and it's fighting against itself. And so we see a really high correlation between early difficult childhood experiences, trauma. You could read about the ACE study, which is, where they've looked at adverse childhood experiences and correlated that to long-term health issues. And you might feel really discouraged and feel like, well, I can't do anything to change my childhood, and I've done all the things I know to have a really successful, well-balanced, do things right in my adult life so that I can have a different experience. But yet I'm saddled with this chronic stress, or now I'm getting autoimmune issues, or I feel like I have to always be on, and even though I can achieve, I just can't relax. Or I might get to the place of freedom in my life and yet I can't enjoy it. And when that happens, it's really important to know that anybody can change that. And a lot of times when I talk with people, they're discouraged because they feel like they've learned all the right things, they have all the right insights, and yet they haven't been able to change it, or they have a really strong faith and they believe the truth of scripture, but they're just not feeling the peace they know is possible. What's really important to understand is that neuroplasticity takes time and repetition. And if we've buried chronic stress or survival stress, traumas, then our nervous system is very, let's say, etched in. Like we have very pronounced grooves in our brain and patterns in our nervous system that continue that pattern. And so to learn something new is not only learning it on a cognitive level, but really using neuroscience-based exercises to bring nervous system regulation. A lot of times it's hard for people to understand that that can happen because it's something they maybe have never had. Maybe they've never really felt safe in their body. And so they're pleasing other people, or their achievements, or staying busy has kept them away from the restlessness that comes up when they try to be still. And so learning to be still in the nervous system is a matter of practice and repetition. So we only do that really through working through the body, or that's the fastest way to do it. Strategies done consistently that activate the vagus nerve and bring about calming, or attune us to sensations in our body. It actually strengthens a part of the brain that feels into the perceptions of the body, what we're experiencing internally and what are we experiencing around us. Also, breath work calms the nervous system. And this can't just be that when I get overwhelmed, I stop and I take a few deep breaths. Yes, that's helpful, but it's doing these things consistently for a certain period of time every day that really repatterns the nervous system. And when the nervous system starts to calm and we start to release those chronic patterns of fight or flight, and we stop chasing adrenaline or chasing cortisol, I'm not saying we're doing that intentionally, I'm just saying it's become a habit in the nervous system. And when we can break out of that pattern and really start to change it, what we see is that there's new opportunities available. So it's like something that's right there in front of us, our family or our career, things that we want to enjoy and take advantage of that are already there. We've already worked hard to get those things. We can now relax and enjoy them. But if we ignore this, if we keep going at the pace where we're always achieving, always pleasing, always living outside of our experiences, outside of our body, what happens is that stress response begins to erode our health, our ability to be present in relationships. It's like our nervous system is sprinting. And in order to get us to rest, it might, we might go into a parasympathetic dorsal response, which is like a shutdown response. So it's not a feel-good relaxation. It's kind of a numbness or a disconnection. And then people start getting depressed. And so just be aware that if you are grown up and you feel like you've outgrown the patterns of your youth because you have a different life now and maybe there's not substance abuse in your home, or there's not physical abuse or emotional abuse, it doesn't mean that your nervous system isn't still acting out those prior patterns. We can be in a very safe physical environment here and now and still have a stress response, underlying thought patterns, and ways of responding to our environment that are very much based on previous life programming and experiencing. It does not mean, though, that we can't change those. It's first a matter of becoming aware of what that is, and then having a plan to implement daily practices so that we can get out of our head, get safe in our body, shut off that stress response, and get on with, just being able to be present and calm. And once we can do that, you'd be surprised the creative energy that it opens up and the awareness of new opportunities that are around us all the time. If you recognize that your physical body is telling you your nervous system's in a stress response, if you recognize that your emotions feel out of control and you work very hard to control so that you don't have to bump up against really big emotions, or that you're, stuck feeling overwhelmed and shut down. These are really good examples of indications to us, warning lights that tell us that you may have outgrown, in a physical sense, your early life upbringing, but you still have the imprint of that in your nervous system, and it's never too late to repattern that. It happens all the time, and with consistency and the right strategies, it can happen far faster. So if that trauma and those early life experiences were, 40 years ago, it's not going to take 40 years to repair that. You can do so in a matter of weeks, establish those new patterns and then keep repeating, and then just grow into the wellness of that by strengthening those things. So I hope this is helpful. If you're new to me, I'd invite you to subscribe to my channel. Like this if it was helpful. Feel free to ask a question, and there's a link for my masterclass below. So if you are a woman who wants to break free from overwhelm and chronic stress, and you are intent on taking action and living in another level of emotional freedom that maybe you haven't experienced before, I'd invite you to watch the masterclass, Secrets to a Calm Mind. It'll really explain a lot more in depth about the brain and, how to indicate chronic stress, and also my strategy for helping women break free. So I hope this is helpful, and we'll see you in the next training. Bye.